One of the highlights of Herodotus' text is the Persian invasion of Greece under the leadership of King Xerxes. In Book 7, the historian describes how the king puts forward his plan to his generals and other leaders. He says that he will cross over the Hellespont into Greece and capture Athens in order to punish it for assisting the Ionians and for sacking Sardis a generation earlier. In his speech, he tells of grandiose plans to expand the borders of the Persian Empire. In the course of these discussions, it's a generally accepted premise that the strong should, if possible, defeat the weak, and it has nothing to do with morality or politics. In his speech, Xerxes wants to punish the Athenians for what he perceives to be a wrong done to the Persians. But he adds, quote, "It is not simply those who have wronged us, you see, who are to bear the yoke of slavery. So too will the innocent," end quote. The second speaker, Mardonius, says more or less the same thing. Quote, "The Dasakai, or the Indians, or the Ethiopians, or the Assyrians, or indeed any number of other peoples ever do the Persians any wrong, that we conquered them and now keep them under us as slaves? No, it was because we wished to widen our dominion," end quote. This makes right argument seem somewhat shocking for the modern perspective. That both Xerxes and Mardonius say these things with no sense of embarrassment or shame is indication of the fact that conquest for its own sake was regarded as a perfectly legitimate undertaking, and it did not matter if innocent people were hurt or killed in the process. This accords entirely with the previous description of Polycrates' quote, "raiding and plundering without discrimination." This is an aspect of the ancient mindset which is difficult for us to understand. In any case, Mardonius gives his arguments intended to strengthen Xerxes' proposal to invade Greece. The third speech comes from Artabanos, Xerxes' uncle, who dares to contradict the king and instead urge caution. He has himself seen war firsthand and knows how quickly things can go wrong. He points out the dangers of a campaign so far away from home. In his speech, he warns Xerxes of invoking the wrath of Nemesis. Although Persia has a great empire and can amass a great army, this is no guarantee of success. He argues, you can see for yourself how it is creatures of an overbearing size that God strikes down with his thunderbolts and prevents from flaunting themselves, while the insignificant rile him not in the least. You can see for yourself how it is always the largest buildings and tallest trees that are the targets of his missiles. God, you see, delights in clipping everything that rises high," end quote. This is a clear statement of the principle of nemesis. Whatever has grown beyond its proper limit must be cut down. One can also hear an echo of the story of the Tower of Babel, which was a building that was on the verge of growing beyond the limits of what humans were meant to achieve. God thus reacted in the same way as Nemesis by putting a stop to the progress and making sure that it did not exceed the limits apportioned to human achievement. Xerxes initially perceives Artabanos' words of caution as an affront and criticizes him in front of the others. Then later, upon reflection, he comes to realize that his uncle was right and thus is ready to call off the expedition. But then he has a dream in which an unknown man rebukes him and tells him to go ahead with the original plan. This dream continues to haunt him, and he calls in Artabanos to help him with the decision. Xerxes asks his uncle to wear his clothes, sit on the throne, and then sleep in his bed, as if to fool the god sending the dream into thinking that it is Xerxes himself. Artabanos indulges him and does so, and sure enough, a variant of the dream comes to him and rebukes him in the same way, threatening punishment for disobedience. This then clinches things, and Artabanos urges Xerxes to revert to the original plan, and thus the invasion goes ahead. This is a story about the limitations of human agency. When the Greeks had an important decision to make, they sent to the oracle at Delphi and asked what the right course of action was. The idea was that any big decision was too large for humans to make. Thus the gods needed to be consulted. Only they had the ability to decide the right course of action. The story of the dreams of Xerxes and Artabanos is a similar one. It was a common belief in the ancient world that the gods communicate to humans in dreams. We've already seen this in Gilgamesh and Homer, and it's a common element in the Old Testament. Both Xerxes and Artabanus recognize their dreams have been sent by the gods who are telling them what to do. In this context, their own opinions and personal desires have no validity one way or another. Once the gods have spoken, it's simply a matter of acting in accordance with their word. This shows a sense of humility of human existence in the face of the divine. Humans are not thought to be fully free. They can't decide their own actions, but must rather defer to a higher authority. In traditional societies, individuals are told what to do by the customs and traditions of their family, clan, tribe, etc. The same idea is at work here. What the individual wants or prefers doesn't matter. The individual does not know what is right for him or herself. Instead, the decision must be made for them in the way that parents make decisions for their children. Our modern conceptions of freedom and individuality are thus historically contingent and took centuries to develop.